Welcome back, everyone, to Black Bull Podcast. Today we got Adam F. Friedman, a.k.a. Iron Glacier on Instagram. He's got some cool stuff. You do painting, you do installation. What else do you do?
Painting, installation, recently been tattooing. I do commission-based kind of mural work. Any kind of art-related fun, creative stuff. I teach as well.
Yeah, and I kind of read up a little bit about your style, and there's a connection between like earth and technology a little bit, like you blend those two together.
Yeah, definitely. The conceptual kind of underpinnings to the work. Painting in particular is a bit more on that conceptual side, where tattooing feels like it can just be more fun, make cool stuff that people like to look at, don't have to really get too deep into it. I mean, tattoos mean things to certain people. Obviously people kind of come to me with ideas and we make a tattoo around it, but painting is a lot more, the painting practice was and is a lot more thoughtful in every kind of step along the way. And so this kind of conceptual underpinnings evolve over time, over the last, 10, 15 years. But I've always been attracted to landscape, kind of those romantic notions of landscape. And it's hard not to reference technology further and further we get into time.
So when people come up to you for tattoos, they usually kind of request certain things to be included into it. Is that how you function?
Sometimes. I mean, I do a lot of flash, which just means I make a bunch of designs and like it when people just choose those. But I'm open to doing people's work as well, as long as I feel like it fits within my realm and it's something that I could do well for them. Occasionally people will come at me with ideas and they'll be explaining it really in a way that I could visualize. And I'm even wondering if they've looked at what I do at all, So in that case, I'll just recommend someone else. Be like, you know what, who does that really well is this person, because I'd rather not take their money and make sure that they left with the better tattoo than get paid and be like, ooh, hope I never have to run into that person at the grocery store.
Right. I feel like that could be a lot of pressure, especially if they're not a good communicator and they're telling you these things and then you're sketching it out and they're like, no, not quite. And then you're just kind of spinning your wheels. Does that happen a lot?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's always, not always, but 90% of the time it's the people that have no tattoos or maybe like one.
Oh, yeah.
Because the less tattoos you have, the more pressure there is around it. It's like, especially if you don't have any, like that tattoo has to tell your life story. Gotta, be super symbolic and meaningful. And then you get it and you realize, oh, it's just a tattoo. Like it really doesn't make that big of a difference in my daily life at all. And then the next one's just like, yeah, I want a fucking wizard right here because it's awesome. And that's what I like to do. I want to be the guy doing that wizard, not the like, I grew up and I'd go to Disneyland and there was this and that. And it's like, there's so much into it. I don't even know where to begin. Like, I don't know. And then there's this weird pressure of no matter what I do, it's not going to live up to this kind of big meaning that it has to this person. So it's tough. But I try to just encourage those people to break it down to one thing. Like, let's take all of these things and then just get rid of the ones that you don't want to focus on, and we'll just try to capture one of them.
Yeah.
And come up with images. But, I don't really work with that as much anymore as when I was first getting started. So
what you just said about focusing on one is something that I preach to people with just their messages in even marketing stuff.
Yeah.
Like they usually want to combine like, oh, we stand for this, but let's also mention we do that. And then we kind of do this. I'm like, no, that's way too much for people to handle. You need to have one message and hit a home run with that one message.
Yeah. So I think some people find success in the multiple messages, but it's like they're literally making separate messages for separate markets.
Yeah.
And so they like their ads look completely different and they're sent to completely different demographics. That's the only way I've seen it work really well.
It just gets so diluted,
It can. Yeah. I mean, but I think if you literally have a like crazy unique product that is dynamic, you might as well grab, because people have, I was actually just reading this, I forget where, on Forbes or something, some website like that. People have interests that are different you wouldn't expect. Like you wouldn't expect, this bodybuilder guy to also be super into fine art or something, right?
Yeah.
Like so, like that. There are company there. If there's a company that appeals to both, they're like, let's market to both. We just have to come up with two separate campaigns.
Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes it works. I think but you're right. Like you have to narrow it down, especially when it comes to tattoo.
Or painting. I mean, any of it. I think the reality is people don't really know what they want. Like, they have this idea in their head, but they can't visualize it. And they assume that because I'm the artist that I'll be able to visualize it for them. But like, if you can't visualize this really personal idea in your head, what that might look like, then I certainly can't. Like, I can make a cool image if we can break it down to a few simple things. But it is a lot of pressure in that sense. And I have friends that just won't do custom work at all for that reason.
Right.
They just won't do it. It's too much pressure. I feel like it never is good enough and it's not fun for me. So they just don't do it.
Yeah. It almost seems easy just to have, what you call it, a flash, like
Flash designs.
Yeah, flash designs. And then be like, hey, what connects to you?
For sure. And people find their own meaning in the images.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, that reminds me of Mount Hood and I grew up in Portland and the colors are like this and make me think of that. And it's like, great, awesome. Or maybe they take it from there and then say, if we change the colors, it would be, my high school, whatever.
Right.
Like something that they can personalize a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So where'd the name Iron Glacier come from?
It's from an Edward Abbey quote.
Ooh, deep.
Edward Abbey's maybe not, I don't know, probably my favorite author, and I've been inspired by his work a lot through my early years of painting professionally to recent, and I keep coming back. I mean, I've read every one of his books like multiple times, and I always wish that there was more because he's got this way. Some people have this way with words that I'll never have. I'm good with images to a degree, but like I can say things through imagery, but I can't say them with words the same way. Where he can describe something that's so epic and so all-encompassing and complex and difficult in a few words, and you just get this deep, almost spiritual sense of what he's describing and the deeper meaning in it. And so for a long time, like a lot of my paintings were inspired by his quotes. Reading is a big part of my practice in general, whether that's, any kind of visual art form, but it helps me to put these ideas into like concise phrases. And so any book that you see in my library that I've read through is just dog ear after dog ear. And then I'll go through when I'm done reading it and take all those quotes and write them out in my sketchbook. And they just, I'll be reading them and it just makes an image pop into my head basically. So take that and work it into a painting. So, not just Edward Abbey, but a handful of other authors as well. But for a while, a bunch of my paintings and even show titles were direct quotes from that. And he's got this quote about this iron glacier that it's like a metaphor for industry and technology and just like the movement of progress, whether that's a positive or negative, however you view that just, you can't halt it. It's like this like ever grinding kind of a thing. And so, I've kind of just like, it's always stuck with me that phrase for some reason. And I did name a painting after it. I think it was 2016 or 2017, a specific painting that I titled Iron Glacier, but I have my own kind of personal reasons why I chose it as my Instagram name, which for me, I didn't really think about it. It's just like an Instagram name. But then all my friends that have these names, like people were like, hit me up or they'll see me at the shop and be like, oh, you're Iron Glacier. And I was like, holy shit. I didn't think people would actually call me that. Like I thought it was just an internet thing. And all my friends like Dave, Winston the Whale and all these people, it's like, oh no, that's your name now, dude.
It's a cool name. Like if you're gonna be called some like Iron is a pretty badass name.
And it's like, there's a lot of tattoo related stuff that has the word iron in it. So I felt like it was fitting for that kind of industry, but it had these like personal kind of connotations for me as well. Like different things I've gone through that led me to get to tattooing, different pressures in life from here and there. So it just kind of made sense for me. But another reason I did that is I've had this weird relationship with my name for a long time. It's coming out of grad school, I started teaching. And so I finished grad school in San Francisco in 2008.
What in?
Fine art. I went to San Francisco Art Institute, which is like an old historic private art school there in San Francisco.
Sweet.
It was a good experience. I wouldn't take it back, but was it worth the money? I don't know.
That's
Debatable.
That's the debate.
Yeah,
with
debatable.
All forms of art.
I'll just put it this way. Like when my students ask me if they should go to art school, I say no. So, we'll just leave it at that. But when I got out of school, I started teaching, and then, I was just getting out there, and it was just at the time where artists were starting to build websites. Like there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, none of that, but you had to have a website. That was a big thing.
Right.
And so I had people telling me, you got to make a website. And so I made a website, and then in order for people to find your website, for the most part, they're using Google, right? And the way it works is like, the more people that come to your website, I guess you either just pay Google and then it pops up to the front.
You can.
Or you just have it there long enough and it gets enough traffic that that's the thing that they search and it gets to the front. So people were telling me, I search your name. There's other guy with the same name who's an art teacher on the East Coast who's
No
like some
way.
pedophile who got
What?
in trouble for sleeping with his
Wait.
underage students. And I was like,
Wait, does he go
Sorry.
by Iron Glacier or
no, this was
Okay.
like pre all of that, but he had my
Okay.
same
Oh
full
my
name.
God, dude.
And so it was like, oh
Jeez.
man, that was just a nightmare. But he drifted into obscurity or prison
Yeah.
or wherever he went to. And I just kept working and that went away. But then recently, post, Instagram being a new thing, it's all over the world now, obviously, big popular medium where most people find everything. There's this other guy with the same name who's a musician, makes like pop music that, cool if you like it, not really my jam, but he's kind of indie pop, but gaining popularity. I think he's been on late shows or whatever. And so people were literally hitting me up on Instagram. Oh my God, you make paintings too? Or you tattoo also? Thinking I'm this dude. So it's a common enough name that I was always getting confused with other people. So I just wanted to do something weird and different that it doesn't really matter what my name is anyways, right? It's just about the work.
That makes sense.
It's a great way to do it. Yeah.
I think that's a smart way to do it.
Yeah.
Do you know there's another Alex Moan in Portland too?
I'm not surprised at
He's
all.
like a Hispanic kid. He got like a DUI. I saw it on the news. I was so
Oh, no.
confused. I was like, who?
Oh.
Like, small world.
Dang.
Stealing your
my
identity.
name's Ben Ferguson. There's a extremely famous conservative radio host named Ben Ferguson. He has his own show. But it's I mean,
Small
you
world,
can't
man.
win with our fucking normal ass biblical fucking names over here. Alex, Adam, and Ben. Yeah, good luck.
So speaking of like social media and all that, when did you start on Instagram? Because you have a good following. Like, how did that work out for you?
I've been using it since probably 2015, I want to say. I was kind of late to the whole game. To kind of bring it way back, when I finished grad school, I was working with galleries in San Francisco and beyond that. As a young person coming out of school, I probably wasn't ready or didn't deserve to be there, but I was lucky enough to be given opportunities and working with these spaces. And back then, we didn't, like, maybe they used Facebook to communicate with friends, but they were printing postcards, they were sending things in the mail, like they had email lists of thousands of people, and like that's what mattered. That's how they got the word out. There was actual kind of something physical coming to you in the mail, and you were getting letters or phone calls or invites. And so there was Facebook, but they weren't really using it for event purposes. And more it started to be used to invite people to events. And then for a minute, maybe that kind of worked, and then it just didn't anymore. I sure don't look at my Facebook. I rarely even look at Facebook. When I do, I'm not looking at the millions of events that people invite me to. It's just not how I find out about it.
It got kind of flooded.
It did.
With things that really do not abide by your interests.
Totally. They'll even suggest events you might like that a friend's going to. So it's like, how do you even differentiate between what you've been invited to and what you might be interested in? It's like, what?
Yeah. I mean, we're always trying to keep an eye on what's going on with social media, what's happening with the algorithms. Because, I mean, it affects all of us. Every designer has to kind of stay tuned with that. We're not sure what's going to happen with Instagram. Instagram, I think when they got bought by Facebook, that's when we saw things get a little weird.
Instagram has been the whole time I've been paying attention to Instagram, which is definitely less than the last 9 years. They've been owned because they've been owned by Facebook for 9 years.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention to Instagram at all in 2010 when they got bought.
Yeah, I mean, the people that got in there early, it was really good for them because there was
if you were
more
an artist,
community. If you were an artist, like tattooers, painters, some friends of mine that were painters build these massive followings early on because there just wasn't a lot of other people posting rad stuff like they were. So I just was late to the game. Like I didn't even get a smartphone until 2015 or something. I was still on the flip phone to the point where I'd take it out and people would be, whoa, dude, what's that? I can't believe. And then I was like, okay, it's time to upgrade. And so then I got it, and I was encouraged by galleries I was working with to use it. So started using it, but the way that my paintings are structured, and the way a lot of tattoos are structured, like, it doesn't look good on the medium.
right?
So you could make the best painting or the best tattoo or whatever. Not saying that I've done either of those, but if it doesn't fit well for that, if it doesn't work for that medium, like some things don't work for TV, some don't work for film. You know, Instagram has its own thing, and you get like a millisecond to capture people's attention. And if it doesn't work or there's too much detail, you lose it. And so actually, when Instagram started becoming really predominant in how people discovered things, it actually had a negative effect on my career at first, as far as art and painting goes, because my work never worked well for the medium. It never, some of my friends that weren't doing as well in the way that the galleries were doing it before with like promoting it, some critic would come from a newspaper or some publication will come through and write about you, and then it would spread through blogs. It was all blogs back then. You get interviewed by blogs, and this kind of stuff would just perpetuate. It would move through kind of in the way that now you get a post on one Instagram, and they all these other big ones post it, and it just keeps spreading around. But it didn't work well for that. And so knowing that I was learning a tattoo, and that's how people discovered tattooers and even book appointments now, I knew that I had to figure out a way to at least make a portion of my work work for that medium. And so kind of, it's been, since tattooing, my Instagram following has grown a lot. And in a way, that's cool. But in another way, it's kind of depressing because I can work 200 hours on a painting that I put 20 years into getting to the point where I can even make that painting or think about making it, post it, and like nobody cares at all. But make a tattoo when I'm pretty new that I don't think is nearly as good as what I'd want to be. And it's just like, boom, and then all of a sudden. So it's like, Instagram's not about how good you are or whether you deserve it or not. It's just about how well it works for that medium. And I stopped looking at Instagram as fun and personal. I used to just look at like rad motorcycle builders or artists. And now it's just, you know, it's fun, and I do follow some people, but it's more work. You know, I'm responding to emails and doing that kind of stuff there.
Well, I think like Instagram is, it's weird because Instagram was made for photography. So if your photos don't look good, I don't think it's going to look good on the platform. That's why everything that does well most of the time has like is really well shot. Like those motorcycles that you're looking at, they probably are shot pretty cool.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And then like all the models that have made a career on Instagram, you know, they're paying photographers to go take photos of them. So,
working on their angles, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they got people who know what they're doing to go out there.
It's hard though with something like painting or a tattoo, because you can have it photographed really well. Like I was taking for a while, I was like, okay, I've always struggled with my paintings reading well on a photograph. People will see them like, oh, it looks like it's made digitally, or you can't see any brushstroke or hand in it at all. And then when this gallerist comes to my studio, like, oh, wow, they're always pleasantly surprised. Like, wow, what a relief. These are so much more textural and, you know, physical than I thought they were. And so you just lose that when it's this 6-foot thing shrunken down to a few inches on a flat glossy screen, no matter who photographs it. So I photograph it, it doesn't look as good if I hire a professional studio with a medium format camera on a track and they're like tiling it together in this massive thing. It still didn't look good. Same with tattoos. Like there's legendary tattooers that do these insane full body pieces, just crazy. They put hundreds of hours into this person, but it just doesn't work. You got to zoom in and take some time and really look at it. And for the medium of Instagram, people are just like right by that thing.
Well, a lot of people they'll post the design like on white background too, and I see that a lot. And that seems to like show the overall design, because when you shoot on a body, like it's a warped canvas. Things are gonna get kind of distorted. So I don't even know what the solution is, but I feel like if people post the white on white or just like the raw design, I feel like that helps a lot.
Like Winston.
Yeah, I mean that's the only person I'm thinking of right now.
Yeah,
he does
it is
that a lot.
effective. It's also effective with his style. It makes it really pop when it's just on that white background.
Yeah, totally.
You work with a lot of color too.
I do, and I'll do the same thing, like, because a lot of people, tattooers especially, are creating their designs less on paper these days and more through digital means, Procreate, iPads. And so, you just take a snap of it basically or share it to your computer. And I've seen people do things like back in the day, the tattooers would stain their paper with coffee to give it kind of more of a flesh tone feel. So you had a better sense, or they'd just get different, like kind of off-white or tan paper to give it more of a feel of what's actually going to look like on your skin.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, if anything, I feel like Instagram has completely warped the way people look at tattoos in general, or what tattoos are even. They just think you see it right after it's done, crazy lighting on it. Hopefully they don't, but some people put them through crazy filters, pop the colors even more. And then that looks great and all, but what's a year later or even months later, those colors start settling in. I think they look better when they're settled in and not brand new. They're more part of your body, but people just think that they're going to look that way forever.
Yeah. I've seen stuff that looks, I feel like, objectively better after a few months or a few weeks or whatever. I like when some artists post this is when it was just done, this is how it looks later, and I appreciate that a lot. It makes me trust them as an artist more. Not that I get tattoos, but I like watching other people get them.
Does that happen just because of the skin has actually healed fully by that point?
Yeah, I mean, it takes 2 months at least for the ink to actually settle into your skin. But then from there, over the course of years, like I've been tattooed by some old school traditional masters here in Portland, and some of them don't even want to take a picture right away. They're like, come back and visit me in 4 months. Better yet, come back in 5 years and we'll take a good picture.
Really?
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know. It's weird. It's like there's this strange relationship with what tattooing is now, or kind of idea of what it is, because of Instagram and this like fleeting immediacy of it, where a tattoo there's this immediacy of it when it's done, but it's something that lives with you and it ages with you, and it changes your body. No matter who you are, how fit or healthy you are, you're going to get older and your skin's going to loosen, and that ink slowly kind of, not fully throughout your entire skin for the most part, but like it'll loosen up and disperse a little bit. And so it changes, and I think that some of the oldest tattoos are the coolest. They're just like old blobs, but you can still tell it's a snake, but it's like 30 years old. Like, whoa, that is rad.
Damn. Where does it blob up the most on bodies, you think?
It depends on the person, and it depends on who did the tattoo. I mean, there's probably people that are way better equipped. There are definitely people that are way better equipped and more knowledgeable in tattooing and have been doing this for 20 years. I could give you better answers. But as far as what I've seen, I've seen people get tattoos like in their shoulders and in their biceps, those kind of areas. And the tattoo is beautiful when it was done, but over time there was this kind of, the ink just migrated around, and it wasn't even like they blew out the line where they went too deep. It just got into their skin in a way, and it depends on people's skin. Like I've got a buddy of mine who's a older guy, older than I am, not old guy, but like couple decades. He's got a couple decades on me and covered in tattoos. And he had some like on his upper chest, lower neck. And there's weird like blue, it almost looks like there was like watercolor or ink on him that they wiped off, but it's still kind of there. It's just in the skin. And you could cover that up with another tattoo. But like for some people that just, it kind of migrates. And, you know, obviously if you do a bad tattoo and you go too deep, that'll happen immediately. You'll see it just whoop right under the skin. And
Really?
that's bad. Bad news.
Damn.
Yeah.
Sounds sketch.
But that's what's crazy about tattooing. Like, I've never hurt anybody with one of my paintings. I might have offended them, but like, I've never actually hurt them before.
That's just the name of the game, though.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the dark side of tattooing much, have we?
No.
On here, yeah. I don't know. I've never done it, so I don't know how bad it can get.
I'm sure, like I said, I'm new enough to it that I almost even feel guilty speaking for tattooing
for sure,
in a way, because I'm so new that I'm learning through all of this. I mean, I can speak from someone that has gotten tattoos and has been giving them for a short amount of time, but I'm really careful about that. You know, people ask me questions about, I can answer specifics about, you know, my experience within it, but bigger generalizations, I just haven't been around long enough to really be able to answer those fairly to the people that have been, you know.
So I want to know a little bit more about like your installation work.
Yeah.
I've always felt that installation art, when I studied art, was like the most interesting because it was immersive and there was like an experience attached to it. But just kind of explain, because people can't see it when they listen to this. Like, what is your installations kind of like? What's the experience?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the name of the game, is to give an experience or to make it immersive. And you know, my favorite artists were the ones, or my favorite shows would be the ones you might have walked into this gallery 50 times before, and you always know it's the same gallery, but this one show you walk in and it doesn't even feel recognizable at all. It's just, not to say that they've gone totally hog wild, but it's just, they've created this experience and space that is different from the usual or what you're accustomed to experiencing in that venue. So I always was trying to figure out ways I could do that. But as a painter, all of my shows they were just paintings on the wall, and had these ideas. Well, what if I did this, or what if I started making sculptures? But art is just an evolution, and it's about putting in work. And so over time, some of my paintings became more three-dimensional, and that I could hang them on the wall in different ways. And from there, I was able to build them onto the floor, start incorporating on-site painting and murals, and from there it just evolves, you know. So I think the first like real installation I'd done that wasn't just paintings on a wall is I literally had these kind of elements in the paintings, little kind of landforms almost, that I made really rudimentary three-dimensional kind of triangle shapes out of, that hung on the wall almost like some kind of IKEA shelf. You like hook it on and pull it down, it sticks straight out of the wall. But they looked like these elements that were sticking out everywhere in the two-dimensional painting work. And so then I would paint them to duplicate or reference those, and then hang them around the gallery. And then in that same show, this is San Francisco, like 2012 or something, and then I had a big one that was on the floor. But it was always in my mind, by the time you get to the point that you've spent all the time and you've made that show, your mind is already so far ahead of that. But there's this disconnect between what you're thinking and what you're doing, because it takes time and you have to develop it. So like, while your ideas may be way out here, you don't have enough experience and you don't know what that's going to look like for your practice to get there until you've, you know, step by step. It's hard to, at least for me, it was harder to make bigger jumps. Like it was an evolution. I think that's probably pretty common for most artists. So from there, I was just able to go bigger. I think the next show, I did a larger installation of those objects, put them on pedestals, painted murals on the wall. And then slowly it got to be more and more, to the point where installing a show wasn't just me putting up paintings. It was like a week of 20-hour days, not sleeping, just painting and going nuts in a space and burning myself. to the ground. But ultimately, that's what I like to do, and I would love to be able to go bigger and bigger. But it does come down to time and resources. So you are somewhat limited by your space and your resources. So you do what you can within that and try to push the limits of what you think you can do. And
Yeah, I mean, it's always a hard date. It's set when you do a show like that.
which is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, those things make it happen. You
Yeah.
know? So you teach art.
I do.
You've seen a lot of young artists try to become artists.
Mm-hmm.
What's one of the biggest mistakes you see people making as they come up?
It's really different now with something like Instagram because people come up really quickly in a way that they couldn't before, and they could be their own boss. Like they don't even need a gallery. They just sell. They've got a big enough following that they can sell prints and paintings and whatever. So I almost feel like even though I'm not that old, we're from a different generation. But I think the people that get into it for the wrong reason, like they want something out of it, they want attention or they want money or they want fame. It's like, those are the people that are not going to last.
That's a lot of people these days. A lot of people want attention. That they find so much value in that.
Yeah. That's the whole social media kind of curse. Or
they want a specific type of attention too, it seems like, which just makes it worse or harder to deal with.
They want the attention every day, where it's like before, it's like you work for a year, an entire year, head down. I didn't even see my friends, barely saw my wife, just like work. Nobody knows what you're doing. And then one night you've got this work up and then it's there for a month. And that's when you're hoping, like, not even that the attention's on you. It's just like, I hope people see this. Success can mean different things. Like either you sell paintings or you get good reviews or it leads to another opportunity, but it was all that. And I feel like that kind of thing's less important now. People want this like everyday update.
Yeah, but it's almost like they're all waiting to be discovered, and they all think that it's right around the corner.
Yeah.
Or that it happens overnight.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, for some people it does, I guess, but yeah, I don't know. It's like anything. I tell my students this all the time. Like, you see someone that's really good at something and they make it look easy. Watch the Olympics, watch sports. It's like professional surfers. Like, oh, I could do that. Like, no, I mean, maybe if you put in 20 years, they don't understand that these people have dedicated every waking moment of their entire life since they were little kids to that for the most part. And so that's just the part you don't see behind anyone that's good at anything. So, the first thing I tell my students in my drawing classes, something along the lines of, I'm not going to be able to teach you how to draw. I mean, you're only going to get as good at drawing as the amount of time you're willing to put into this class. So a lot of people get kind of bummed out about that. And I've had students, because a lot of them are younger and they have this like sense of immediacy and urgency, or that they want to get it done ASAP, but they'll get so bummed out that their drawings don't look how they want them to, that they just freeze up and they can't even draw. It's like,
that's like that Amazon Prime generation, though. Everyone's the immediacy and urgency. You want bananas, you click a button, and there it is in like an hour.
It's crazy. It's hard to walk that line of being a total Luddite and like curmudgeon of like, in my day I had to walk to get those bananas, and now they just push this button and they eat their bananas. But
well, it's weird that art is just becoming more digital too. I mean, that's a weird thing that we're seeing. How, I mean, as a drawing person, obviously you need to know the fundamentals of drawing, but a lot of people are just drawing on iPads. They're drawing in Illustrator, and that's the norm. How do you feel about that?
I've been kind of around long enough and having this conversation long enough that my feelings of it have changed over time. At first, we talked a lot about this when I was in grad school, because there were more people making digital paintings or making an image digitally and printing it on canvas and hanging it up, and that was it. Like, that was their painting. And the argument then was, is it a painting or is it not? And now that almost seems like a silly conversation, because there's galleries around the world. Some of the most famous artists in the world do that. Maybe they paint back into it after it's printed, or maybe they paint and then they print on it, or whatever. Like, I have friends that do that are super famous. And so it's not even a conversation anymore. It just is. So I don't feel like it's a bad thing, or it's, if anything, I kind of use the analogy that it got to the point where anybody could take a National Geographic level on their phone if they got lucky enough. Like the light was right, they were in the right place. Boom, you got this amazing photo. You got all these filters. You can mess with it. It looks great. It might not be high enough resolution to print or whatever, but like you can get this unreal photo where before digital cameras even, you had to know how to use your tools to even come close to capturing something like that. So what does that do for the people that really want to get good at photography? It forces this kind of evolution. So the people that now stand out from the rest of the pack, people just snapping shots on their travels on their phones, are the ones that know the latest technology, know how to use it, know post-production and all this stuff. So if anything, I feel like it just changes an art form and it evolves it. And there's always going to be kind of old schoolers. And you see this a lot in tattooing and painting and probably mechanics and everything, where they don't like the new stuff coming along. But I try to look at it positively, like how is this going to evolve this thing that we all love?
Yeah, I think the rules got broken when mixed media became prevalent, because that was weird.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like all of a sudden you could paint over photos and that's still art, and that's a weird concept for people to understand at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays you could do anything.
Yeah, I mean, when you have it in your mind that painting is just pushing pigment around in some kind of suspension, whether that's acrylic or oil, it can be hard to think that it's, if you're using other materials, that it's still painting. But you know, a lot of these installations that I do, I mean, I still look at those sculptural objects as paintings. I'm not a sculptor. They're just, it is basically a painting. It's just kind of taking a different form. So I build all my stretchers. I stretch all my canvas. Like, to me, that's an important part of the process. I don't ever want to hire that out. I like doing that. Something about that craftsmanship and being involved from step one. I feel like I made the whole thing, you know, and
Yeah.
to each their own. That's not necessary, but I like doing that. So building these objects that I would stack up in a room or something, the process of it wasn't all that different from building the stretchers. Like, I've structural, I build it, I sand it, I prime it, I paint it. Mm-hmm. And so in a way, I looked at those as paintings. But if you look at contemporary painting magazines, or look at a magazine like New American Paintings, which has been around for a while now, but they're kind of trying to show new upcoming, like cutting edge painting. Some of it walks a fine line, like fabric, only using fabric, or they're these weird sculpture. It's like a canvas stretcher with no canvas stretched over it. And it's like different ways to push that medium. And some of that gets into kind of more conceptual territory, but
Which holds value.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. What else? Anything else you're trying to go into?
But I mean, I guess I could talk about how I got from painting and art to tattooing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So how did you go? I'll lead into it.
Yeah, cool. Perfect.
So you started from painting and then went into installation, or was that before or after painting installation?
It kind of just happened through that evolution of it.
Yeah.
And then I think the last big solo show I had was in LA in the beginning of 2017. I'm sorry, 2017, 2018. 2017. Shoot. I've had a couple group shows since then, but at about that point, I started actively pursuing to learn how to tattoo. Mm-hmm. And I'd had some friends for years and years encouraging me. And for a while I had this thing like, oh no, I'm a painter, I can't do that. And it wasn't me being this like pretentious painter. I mean, maybe that was a little part of it, but it was more just, I was so focused. It was like, I can't even find enough time to get this show done or accomplish what I want in my studio. How am I going to start from scratch and learn something new, bottom of the barrel, like be a beginner again? But the more tattoos I got and the more kind of frustrations I began to have with the art world, or at least my place or experience in it, the more tattooing became appealing to me. I don't know how many listeners or you guys yourselves have worked professionally in that fine art world of dealing with galleries and dealers and art fairs and all that, but it is a hard place. Like, it is a tough, strange, weird, sometimes very pretentious world.
Oh, definitely pretentious. It seems like more consumers are buying tattoos than buying paintings.
Oh, for sure, because most people don't give a damn about painting. Like, it blew my mind moving to Portland. My wife's from here, but we moved back up here in like 2010, and we go to art shows, or I had a big show here early on, and friends of mine would come in. They make really good livings. They own beautiful homes. They buy, $8,000 couches or whatever, but they don't own paintings. And they'd come in and be like, oh, wow, I've lived here for 15 years. This is the first gallery I've gone in. And that just blew my mind.
Wow.
Because coming from a place like San Francisco, it's like you just went to galleries, even if it was for the free wine or it was just your friend or whatever. Like, you could not live there and avoid it. I mean, maybe people do now, but nobody that I knew, even people that weren't interested in art at all, you'd end up there. It was just part of the city culture, or somewhere like LA or New York. It's just the history. That's what people do, And so it was this weird kind of thing. Like, it just didn't feel like it held the same kind of value for people. And that's not to say that these people in these other big cities were actually buying the work for the most part,
right,
or justify whatever reasons they were buying it for. But yeah, I mean, that kind of blew me away a little bit. And so to bring it back around, I mean, ultimately working in that environment for so long, it just feels like even if you're working with the right people, it is all about working with the right people, but finding the right partnerships and working with the right people is rare and really hard. And it may work for a little while and then it doesn't work. Or like, not just right in that you get along with them and you guys are respectful to one another and you're working hard for each other, but it could be wrong in the sense that they just don't have the audience for you, or they're not the right venue for your work, or you're not right for theirs, like, and vice versa. And so finding that relationship that just works is rare and it's difficult, but it's 100% necessary, unless you're like some Instagram star that can just sell their own paintings. But you're not going to be on a level of fine art that, some of the most famous artists in the world don't have Instagrams or have like 200 followers, but they're selling paintings for $50,000, $60,000, $70,000.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot.
So
why do you think people avoid art shows or have like been drawn away? Or I guess because they don't connect to it. How do you encourage people to connect to it? Because I feel like that's the biggest issue with newcomers in the art scene.
Art's just tough like that because you need some degree of pre-existing knowledge. I mean, you could walk into a show and just like it, but it's not always about do you like it or not. I mean, I've always been interested in those things that take some time, like that's why I don't like pop music. I want something that takes a little bit more effort to get into, it's like if you listen to some Ornette Coleman free jazz improv craziness, most people will say, oh, it just sounds like a racket, like when my 2-year-old gets on their little xylophone thing just going nuts. But those people don't know anything about jazz history and how well that these people could play outside of this and the conscious conceptual decisions they were making. I used to work, when I got out of school, I was working part-time as a preparator, hanging paintings and installations and whatnot at the SF MoMA. And I'd see these people come in and they'd see this Picasso and be like, oh, my 3-year-old could paint that. And it would piss me off because it's like, no, your 3-year-old can't and never will. And even if they make something that looks somewhat remotely like that, no one's ever going to care about it,
Right.
because they're not in an influential position and haven't put in the time and put in the work to be respected enough to challenge conventions and norms to get there. So, but I understand where they're coming from because they didn't study art history, and maybe going to the museum was the first time they've ever experienced art out of their local cafe or whatever in their life. So
those are the same kind of people that probably just watch the same like superhero movies over and over, because that's the same thing. They're all the same story,
Totally.
with tweaks here and there. But like Marvel's just doing the same shit
for sure,
with the exception of The Dark Knight. That was a very good one. I liked that.
That's not Marvel.
Yeah, or I mean, I'm just saying superhero movies in general.
I always like the origin stories the best because I feel like that first movie comes out and it's got so much story behind it, and there's all these different narratives and characters, and then they just get further and further away into spectacle. And like people want spectacle. That's why people love these celebrities. Even are on Instagram doing all kinds of silly things. Like it's just one big circus, and people like that. Like I don't think that most people want to sit with something a little bit longer. And I can be guilty of that sometimes too. I mean, I'll get a new album, and I'll listen to it and just not like it and just put it on the shelf and didn't give it enough attention. But then 6 months later, I'll put it back on and maybe I'm just in a different state of mind, or it just took that one time and I listened to it again. I'm like, what was I thinking? It become one of my favorite albums, and I'll just listen to it over and over. So some things just take a little time. It was a good exercise for me. I'd been part of a critique group when I first moved back to Portland. Not when I first moved back. It had been a couple of years. Then I started actually meeting some people in the community, and they invited me to be part of their critique group. So we'd meet at each other's studio once a month and sit for like an hour, have a glass of wine, talk about each other's paintings. A lot less pretentious than it sounds.
Cheese and wine.
But the point of the story is that some of the people's work would be the kind of stuff I'd see in a gallery and just be like, not that it was poorly done or anything, it just wasn't my thing, and I'd walk right by it. But the fact that we had to sit there for an hour and really think about it and talk to them about it, sometimes by the time I left, I really liked it.
Yeah.
It was like it had a different effect on me, and I sat with it and I actually considered it. And I think that's the advice I'd give to people if you want to learn how to look at art. Just consider it. Ask questions like, why do you think that this is happening, or that the artist made those decisions? And if you don't have the patience to do that, then you're probably not gonna like going to galleries.
Yeah.
Yeah, hear the story behind it. Check out the artist statement.
Artist statements. Yeah, we talk about that. Like, why not? Why do people go there and not even read the artist statement? I feel like it gives so much context as to actually what's happening.
Yeah,
it's always
those can be tricky too, though, because they can be very wordy and
for sure.
Yeah,
but it's always more interesting when you know the artist and you know the story behind it. I can't think of any piece of art that I didn't find more interesting once I figured out what was going on behind the scenes, or like what all the stuff I couldn't see,
for sure,
whether it was in front of my face or not. When someone pointed that out to me, I mean, even with pop music, even with stuff that seems like horrible derivative shit, sometimes you find out how it got made, and you're like, oh my god, that's actually fucking incredible. Now this song means something to me, and that works for any art, I think, except for stuff that actually where the story behind it is crap, which does happen sometimes.
Yeah,
it
definitely does. But usually that stuff ends up getting weeded out, or it's like flash in the pan type stuff.
Yeah.
Like it'll come and be really popular, and that happens in art all the time, especially post social media, or pre-social media, however you want to put that. But be these artists that these dealers would find fresh out of grad school, nobody knew who they were, and they just blow them up and sell their stuff hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that just, if anything, does a disservice to the artist, because then they're at this level where they can't go back. You can't go back and start selling your paintings for less after that, because all these collectors of yours have paid this amount, and they find out you're selling it for less. They're not going to be very happy about that. So the artists end up just fizzling out, because there's only the market for that work was limited to begin with. And so these dealers and gallerists are just kind of like opportunists preying on them for that moment and not actually trying to help them advance their careers. But yeah, art's tough like that. Music can be tough like that. I think anything that's worth a little more thought can be tough like that. You just got to be a little more patient.
I like that. Got any shows coming up?
I don't. I mean, I've been kind of I've been painting slowly and working my way back into my studio again. But I've been saying no to a lot of opportunities. I had kind of got to this point where I started feeling kind of frustrated with how things changed, partially because of social media, but just in general. A lot of the connections I had, the people I was working with, excuse me, that stuff, those things come in cycles. Like most careers, I think they just build and then you retire. And from my experience in fine art, it's like get to this point and then, you know, galleries come and go and they close. Maybe your gallery closes and then it's like, boom, all your connections. And then you build it back up and then boom. And it's just this constant like up and down cycle. Maybe that's just business in general. I don't know. But I felt like galleries were starting to depend on the artists to bring in the people. It's like, oh, how many people do you have on social media? Who are your collectors? They're asking me all these questions that I wasn't used to being asked. It was like, well, that's your job. Like, I'm already here full time, like making these, trying to put this thing together. I don't have time to be emailing and like posting this stuff to social media and trying to build that thing. Like, I thought that was kind of what you were for, right? And so it's just this big gamble. Like, even if you do have this great relationship, there's no one that can sit there and tell you 100% certainty I'm going to sell all these paintings unless they've already sold them. So you take a gamble every single time you have a show like that. You know, put tens of thousands of dollars a year of time into a show and then you don't sell anything, or you sell enough to break even, but like who can make a living that way, you know? And at a certain point it feels like you're putting in all this time and money so that people can walk around with their wine and like talk about how much you suck or whatever. Oh my God. And so that kind of stuff just started to wear on me a little bit. I was like, why am I doing this over and over again? Sometimes they're successful in some ways and others, and sometimes they're not. And then we had a baby and it just kind of changed that completely. It was like, I just didn't feel like I could keep doing that to my family. My wife was patient enough with me. She would have let me do that. And if I wasn't married, if I never met my wife, I would have followed that to my ruin. I would have been on people's couches, like traveling around, doing whatever, end up either successful or in the gutter. You know, like
once you have a kid, a lot less time on your hands to do anything. So you got to be very picky about what you're doing.
Totally. So, you know, the appeal of being able to make the kind of imagery that I wanted that didn't have to be so heady. Not that I wasn't painting what I wanted before. I always did what I wanted. But to be able to give people something that was more immediate and quicker and work with people, and to be able to, you know, tattooing to me just feels so much more honest. It's so much more straightforward and honest than art is in a lot of ways. Like, the art world likes to convince itself and put out to other people that it's this big important thing and they're communicating important messages and covering important topics. And maybe the artists are, but in the grand scheme of things, it's business. And these galleries are trying to make money. As much as they can say they're trying to show important artists, like, they wouldn't just do that. If they really want to do that, they'd have some cool nonprofit space that just did alternative whatever. But like, they're trying to make money and as much of it as they can. And that's what it is. But very few of them will actually admit that. So the minute you're not making them money anymore, you're gone. You're gone. You're done. They don't care. So but tattooing, it's like everybody knows you pay for a tattoo and it costs a certain amount and you go in and you have this experience and you leave and that's it. It's like, it's an industry. It's not trying to be something else. It just is what it is and what it has been. And yeah, it's evolving and changing with technology, but you know, it's open and it's straightforward and honest. And that attracted me after so many years of kind of wading through this ambiguity of like, what is this really? And like trying to say the right thing or be the right person or whatever. And
you know, we see this conversation always come up about, and like we said, honesty, but then there's the other one, like authenticity. It seems like people value it so much, but we're not seeing it all the time. Even with like the award shows recently, like our buddy Jeff Taylor and a lot of filmmakers are they're angry that the Oscars are not. They're putting commercials over the award segments for like cinematography and hair and makeup and editing and all this stuff, which is
pretty whack.
Those are big major things, and I can't believe they're just putting ads over that shit. And then like Drake at the Grammys said, you know, people are going to your shows, you're winning, like that's the award right there, you don't need this. And they kind of cut his speech short at the end. So we're all seeing that people are trying to make money out of people and it pisses you off, but yet we're still doing the same shit.
Yeah, I don't know why people that always shocks me, because it's like, why, if you actually believe that, why are you watching the Grammys? Like, the Grammys is such a obvious lie.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
he even
it's
said like
really
this is a business.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It's a business, and they did the whole like. I don't know. I can't speculate too much, but it seems like a
Let it
very
out.
clear. It seems like a very clear scam. The whole thing, all the award shows, they
It's
seem
a
like
spectacle.
Yeah,
because
it's
you
a
have to
spectacle.
campaign. You campaign
You have
for
to
your award.
campaign. People it's a small group of people that vote for you to win. Like as someone like me who everything I've listened to, I go through waves. I really listen to everything. I do listen to a lot of pop music, not as much as probably the average person who pays attention to the Grammys. I've never paid attention to the Grammys. I fucking hate the Grammys. I've always hated it. I like some of the songs that are up for best song or whatever, but most of the music I like will never ever make it to the Grammys. Somehow Between the Buried and Me made it this year. or last year.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
up for a great. Like, was there a metal genre?
Yeah. Yeah.
good for
Yeah.
them.
So yeah,
Every
I
now
know.
and then.
But that blew my mind. Which
they
is
win?
cool. I think they won something.
But it's really, those bands still have a lot of kind of attention around them, even if
They
it's
do.
like subculture
Yeah.
attention. They have it. Like, there's been didn't like Mastodon or someone, I don't know if they actually won a Grammy, but some of those big bands,
They're still. That's a huge band. Though.
yeah, I mean, they're huge.
Yeah.
And I think I've heard some radio piece, and they were talking about the Oscars and how do they really matter and do they not? And they matter to the film industry, because if you get that award and then you put that on your,
Yeah.
I don't even know if people
Yeah.
buy DVDs
a
anymore
good
or whatever.
point.
Like, that's gonna sell a lot of movies.
That's a good
and
point.
It's gonna, so for them, for the industry, it's like it's business in that they want to get it. The actors want it because it's recognition,
Yeah.
and it's even if you didn't, someone else should have won or whatever it is, it's gonna get you business. And so I don't know. People like it, but they do skip over a lot of the important stuff because they just want to know who's the best actor,
Yeah.
who's the best actress. That's it. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why it's at the end. It's like
Yeah.
the grand finale.
They
and
want
that's
to
all
see if
people
there's
care
any
about.
wardrobe malfunctions.
Yeah. I want to talk about what silly dress Lady Gaga was wearing
Oh
or
my
something.
God, for real though. I think this year was the Cardi B's weird ass outfits.
we gotta wrap up.
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if people want to find you, Iron Glacier on Instagram.
Yeah.
You have a website. You have a website.
I do. It's I'm kind of in the process of building a new one, but it's been kind of slow. But it's just artbyadamfriedman.com.
Cool, man.
All right, cool. We'll post a link in the description for everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for
Good
coming
chat
by,
with you.
man. You're a cool
Yeah.
dude. So
Likewise.
hopefully we see you around.
Totally. You know
All
where
right.
to find me.
That being said, thanks Cascade Street Distillery. Good gin. Always making the times better. And see you guys on the next one.
Thanks, everyone. Peace out.
Go.